reaction from the other camps to these developments?
Yeah, we've seen two very high-profile, two front-runners dropping out of this race in the last 24 hours or so. Senator Amy Klobuchar, she dropped out after really struggling in some of the early states. And also Pete Buttigieg, who was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. He came from absolutely nowhere. He was completely unknown here in the US to actually be one of the front-runners in those early states. But he also dropped out. And both of those candidates, after dropping out, they endorsed the former Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, in this race. And that's a really important thing for Joe Biden, because what he's hoping to do is really coalesce all of the different centrist voters who have perhaps been supporting Klobuchar or Buttigieg in those early states. He's hoping that on Super Tuesday, those types of voters will come to him, and that will give him the firepower, if you like, to take on Bernie Sanders, who's currently leading the table. One other name that I really should mention is Mike Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York City. He has spent hundreds of millions of dollars in the build-up to Super Tuesday, and this is the first time his name is on the ballot. So we're now really watching to see what all that money, all that cash has actually done for him in terms of actual votes.
Well, thank you so much, Giles Gibson, joining us there live from Washington, D.C. Now, staying in the United States, at least 8 people have died as tornadoes swept through the central U.S. state of Tennessee. The strong storms collapsed dozens of homes and buildings in the state capital of Nashville. Authorities have opened an emergency shelter for residents displaced by those tornadoes. Schools and transit lines have been closed. Tennessee is one of those 14 U.S. states set to vote today for Democratic nominee to stand against Donald Trump in November's presidential election. Authorities say polling sites in the state will be open unless otherwise indicated. Let's take a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Fears of escalation in Libya as the UN-backed government plans an offensive against Haftar's eastern-based forces. And World Wildlife Day. What is Africa doing to protect its endangered species? We now head to Libya, where there are fears Tripoli may soon witness an escalation in fighting. This follows an announcement by the Government of National Accord that it will soon launch a major military assault on General Khalifa Haftar's forces. Now, according to the country's interior minister, the operation is aimed at pushing back Haftar's forces to end days of shelling that have caused repeated closures of Mitiga airport. The recent escalation is the most serious since the January 12 ceasefire, when the Libyan government saw as the launching of a new offensive by Haftar.
The ceasefire was violated by Haftar from the first day, but we, as the Government of National Accord in the Western region, have patience. We want to end this crisis. We do not want to lose any region of Libya. We headed for dialogue, and we are still insisting on dialogue. But we believe that Haftar moved from a breach of the ceasefire to starting another attack. Definitely, because Tripoli is suffering from rocket attacks. More than 140 were fired on Friday. This situation will not continue. Definitely the GNA and its forces do not want to see Tripoli subject to shelling every day, and it will move these forces away from Tripoli.
South Sudan's new government is bringing hope to many residents in the capital, Juba, who say lasting peace could now return to the country. President Salva Kiir's 5 vice presidents are, however, still consulting on how ministries in the country should be shared among the political factions forming the government. CGTN's Patrick Oyet spoke to some university students in Juba on their future expectations.
What is your view about South Sudan at the moment?
South Sudan will start afresh. This will be a new beginning for our country. We are positive. This time is a time that we should be positive and believe that this is a new beginning for South Sudan. And 2020, 2021, until the end of this revitalized government, and we go to have an elected government in the future, I hope we'll be in a peaceful situation and things will be okay.
The view that I have about the formation of the new government, though it has given us a lot of time to think about what is going to happen next, but then we still have hope that everything will be all right as we have it before. So we as the youth of South Sudan, we're hoping for peaceful, and we need South Sudan to be in peace.
So what is your expectation now?
Well, now the government is being formed, and what we expect from the new government is there should be reforms, in the sense that we want to see them build roads, build schools, and allocate money where the benefit goes directly to the citizens of this country. We are tired. We have seen people drive V8s, expensive cars on bad roads, okay? We have seen our people die because of very simple diseases. Now this is a time where we expect the government to think of the future of the people of this country. They must think of what should make these people happy. We also expect the government to create good relations between the parties, in the sense that there should be a concrete reconciliation. We don't want to form this government and then 6-7 months later they go back to war because of other simple issues. So we expect this time that they are going to be much more committed to the fact that we need them to lead this country the right way.
And also the improvement of the health centers and the schools. As you can see, even our school is not in a good standard, so we need the improvement. And these places that, the lands that they use for building hotels and whatever, we need them to be put whereby they will establish schools, so that our young children, then our age mates will also get access to education.
So how do you see the future now in the next coming years?
I believe that we'll have an elected government in this country. I also believe that there will be democracy, in the sense that people will run and convince the electorates on what they will deliver when they go to such offices. We have seen only a few folks being circulated and recycled in these positions. So I hope in the next few years there will be general election. I also hope in the next few years our people will have economic development.
My expectation about the future is that we hope for leaders that will not work for their own interests, but for the interests of the people. Because if you work for your own interests, then nothing is going to go, nothing is going to move ahead. We'll just remain there because you're working for your own interests. Then all the leaders that will be coming, I think they will be good ones. And to stop these things of tribalism and all those things, all we need is the coexistence in South Sudan.
March 3rd marks World Wildlife Day, an occasion to appreciate the planet's fauna, flora, oceans, seas and wild animals. But discussions usually center around the preservation of plants and animals that are constantly under threat from human activity. Illegal wildlife trade is one of Africa's biggest challenges. The continent has been working closely with China to curb the illicit trade. CGTN's Julie Shire has more.
World Wildlife Day is a time for the planet to take stock of its natural treasures. A quarter of all plant and animal species face extinction because of human activity and climate change.
The importance of wildlife in the world is really just to maintain biodiversity and ensuring that we have something to leave left for the next generations. You know, with the human-animal conflict that's going on in the world. We are losing populations of animals at an alarming rate, whether it's due to agricultural farming lands or poaching or exotic wildlife trade.
Trafficking of rhinos, pangolins and other animals used in Asian medicine remains a major challenge for Africa. The Africa-China Reporting Project has been part of efforts over the last decade to end black market trade.
We've had an investigation in Cameroon, for example, that really was able to establish how the pangolins are poached in the interior of Cameroon and how they are then trafficked by local people to the cities, and then in the cities they are actually then bought by middlemen, and from there onwards by a very complicated supply chain in various shipping vessels and various false papers and these things, and happens in certain places that these things eventually reach Asia.
Syndicates prey on vulnerable communities in close proximity to game parks and other natural habitats, where unemployment is high.
You have people in Africa who are dealing with a situation where there is a demand for these things, and then they often have a situation in Africa where there's real poverty, that people are really forced to undertake these things because they have very few other options.
2020 has been labelled the biodiversity super year. Countries across the globe will be looking at how to sustain life on Earth as populations grow and the planet gets warmer. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
The United Nations General Assembly first proclaimed March 3rd World Wildlife Day in 2013. Since then, the day has become one of the most important global events dedicated to wildlife. CGTN's Daniel Arab-Moy takes a look at some of Africa's endangered flora and fauna.
Researchers have identified 4 regions in Africa that are particularly exposed: Ethiopia, central Tanzania, the southern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and the West African tropical rainforest. The rosewood is Africa's largest trafficked form of flora. Orchids are wanted for decorations, food, and medicine, now under threat of extinction. Cycads is the world's oldest seed plants. There are growing fears the plants could go extinct. In Africa, the pangolin is on the brink of extinction, hunted for their scales believed to have medicinal purposes. The black rhino is critically endangered. They are killed for their horns. African wild dogs have been shot and poisoned. Their population is declining, their habitat lost to deforestation and human developments. Back to you.
And let's now go to Uche with the latest business news.
Thanks, Lindy. And coming up on Africa Live Bits. Prosecutors in Angola close in on the children of former President Eduardo dos Santos in a corruption probe. And Tax Justice South Africa decries the level of tax evasion and trade in illicit goods in the country.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now, prosecutors in Angola are hopeful that they could recover some of the money the country lost in corrupt deals if they nail some members of the former president's family. Now, José Filomeno dos Santos, son of former President José Eduardo dos Santos, has been on trial since December last year. The 42-year-old has been charged with stealing millions of dollars from Angola's sovereign wealth fund, which, of course, he oversaw from 2013 to 2018. Here's CGTN's Terry Wangari with more.
Angolan prosecutors are steadily closing in on former President José Eduardo dos Santos' children. José Filomeno dos Santos is the first dos Santos member to stand trial since President Lourenço launched a purge of the dos Santos administration. This is in a bid to tackle graft soon after he took over in 2017.
In my opinion, those who did wrong deserve to be punished. If the children of the former president really did this to the country, then it's really sad.
The allegations are false.
Isabel dos Santos was this year charged with financial crimes related to her tenure at state oil company Sonangol. The 77-year-old ex-president, who is believed to be in Spain for medical treatment, is so far not under investigation.
As far as I know, there is no fact that indicates that the former president has committed any criminal irregularity. At the moment, there is nothing that proves that he has committed any infraction.
They are not to blame. The father is to blame. He couldn't take the riches of Angola, so he had to go through the hands of his daughters and sons. So in my opinion, they are not the ones to blame. When you are a son and your father gives you something, are you not going to take it? Of course you will.
Judges at the ex-president's son's trial last week received a written response from him stating he had personally authorized former central bank governor Walter Filipe da Silva to move $500 million to Switzerland to guarantee an investment fund. Da Silva is accused of embezzling the money alongside Dos Santos' son and 2 others, a claim the former central bank governor has since denied.
My client only acted in the name and representation of the state by mandate of the then holder of the executive power. Therefore, Article 127.1 of the Constitution says that the president is not criminally responsible for his actions performed in the exercise of his functions.
Jose Eduardo dos Santos took office after the death of Angola's first president, Agostinho Neto, in 1979. He remained in power for 38 years, during which he saw the former Portuguese colony through a 27-year civil war that ended in 2002. Peace was followed by an economic boom as investors rushed in to tap Angola's vast oil reserves. Dos Santos allegedly reserved top jobs in his administration for close friends and family. Natural resource wealth amassed in the hands of a few, and evidence suggests large sums of public money were diverted to offshore accounts.
And the reason why he will not escape is because much of the people who have been indicted, high-profile cases, they all refer back to him as having followed orders from him, as having done something with his acquiescence or with his knowledge.
Resource-rich Angola is ranked 146 out of 180 countries on Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index. Most of the country's 30 million people live in poverty, failing to benefit from the flood of dollars from crude oil and diamonds. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has since lauded the Angolan president's anti-corruption drive, which has seen him pursue the Dos Santos family. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
Meanwhile, Tax Justice South Africa has called for bold new measures to urgently tackle the widespread trade in illicit goods. Now, the group says the illegal trade could cost the nation an estimated $7 million in taxes every single day. Here's Angelo Coppola with more.
The trade in illicit products is wide-ranging and continues to increase annually, and it's at the expense of the country's citizens because taxes aren't paid.
The money that people are paying for illicit products doesn't go into the fiscus. It goes into individuals' pockets. So in this way, we are enriching a few people and getting people to buy products that are actually not right. Most of them, they are counterfeited. Most of them, they could be their actual brands but haven't gone through the underground market.
The Consumer Goods Council of South Africa represents its members' interests, and almost every sector is impacted, from tobacco to alcohol, food fraud, pharmaceuticals and clothing. The Council has developed technology that could be used in the fight to stop illicit products from reaching the market.
GS1 barcoding and the unique identifiers, because then you're able to track from source to the point of retail whether or not a product is authentic and it has gone through the required exercise and customs control. So, and the work that we also do with law enforcement through the partnership that we have with SAPS can go a very long way in strengthening this fight.
Industry insiders suggest that the coronavirus appears to be having an impact on the importation of illegal goods. But more needs to be done, says Tax Justice South Africa.
We want government to act decisively. We want them to come down hard on those involved in the illicit trade. It's organized crime. We also want mandatory jail terms. We're saying that if those people are found guilty, they need to get a minimum jail term of 7 years. And we want the law to really come down hard on these people. We want more border control. We need to strengthen our borders. Smuggling is rife.
Counterfeiting and importing products illegally is a huge drain on the fiscus, and if it's not sorted out very soon, it's going to have a major impact on the economic growth of the country and also lead to brands closing down because they're losing market share. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And still in South Africa, authorities in the country are looking to boost the role the private sector plays in social development. The country's GDP growth is stuck below 1% right now. Unemployment has remained stubbornly high at just under 30%, and household expenditure is deeply constrained. Here's CGTN's Travis Andrews exploring how private capital and ideas can change these trends.
With a rapidly changing technological environment, South Africa needs to prepare for the fourth industrial revolution and the opportunities it can leverage from it in the future. That's according to both the government and the private sector. We're trying to find each other on important issues such as social development, which can deliver effective change in the country. The roundtable discussions are meant to not only find common ground on developmental issues, but lay out a broader plan to grow what is still a highly unequal society.
I think it sets the tone for a working partnership, a partnership where government will definitely not feel alone in this discourse in trying to make South Africa a better place, but with the help of the private sector, civil society, NGOs and platforms like GovChat, we can truly make this country a better place.
But social development issues are not just in townships and poor communities, they're also in schools and colleges, where the youth are and where they still head out into unemployment. That there is a social development gap to fill for organizations such as the Youth Employment Service, who create over 32,000 new jobs for youth every year.
We believe firmly in the power of technology to drive the competitiveness of young people, to give them the enabling tools to be able to turn their fresh ideas and their energy for solving problems into an actual business.
They've become a model of success organizations can have when they put social upliftment and development at the forefront of their business. With youth unemployment levels of close to 55%, the private sector has struggled to plug important social development gaps. But with the fourth industrial revolution on the horizon, that could slowly begin to change. Utilizing mobile phones, the youth can now access job opportunities that could turn them into job creators.
They're learning how to transact financially, digitally. They've got opportunities to build a business on this phone, and they've got an opportunity to reskill, retrain, and in some cases, this is the only training that they will have available. So a digital footprint, a job, you can transform lives.
South Africa's history and huge inequalities, though, have made social development on a meaningful scale a real huge task that requires all sectors of society to put their best foot forward. But with new commitments set by the government and the private sector, it sets a positive outlook for the future. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Now in Tanzania, an agribusiness forum has concluded in the commercial capital of Dar es Salaam. The forum brought together key players in the agricultural sector, including the state, to look at how best to achieve the country's industrialization goals. Now, barely 8% of the commercial lending portfolio goes into the agriculture sector, with banks in the country seeing the sector as being too risky. With the Continental Free Trade Area due to take effect from the 1st of July, the protection of domestic markets is also a concern.
You can't lend to a closed business the same way you lend to a farmer. You just can't. And we can't succeed if we cannot lend to farmers.
We have a duty as Tanzanians to love our products. By doing that, we ensure markets. The important protection efforts by government, coupled with a love of local products, will assure the creation of a reliable market for products from our own industries.
Well, let's shift focus now. The Peugeot 208 has bagged the 2020 Car of the Year title at the cancelled Geneva International Motor Show. It is one of the most prestigious awards in the auto industry. The French Super Mini surpassed 6 other rivals, gathering 281 votes from 60 jurors hailing from 23 countries. Now, the title that has been awarded yearly since 1964, Tesla's Model 3 came second with 242 votes, while Porsche's Taycan came third with 222 votes. While often lively, this year's ceremony was quieter than usual, as journalists were barred from attending the event, which of course normally marks the start of the Geneva Motor Show. This is due to a preventative measure passed by the Swiss